same. Now the game isn't played that way. You've got to stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, looking around you and thinking it's okay.
Welcome to socialengineer.org podcast number 9. We have our
number 9.
Number 9, can you believe it? 9 whole months, 9 whole podcasts.
You were supposed to do that with your deep, sexy voice.
Oh yeah.
Number 9.
Yeah, thank you. Much better.
No problem.
So obviously we have Dave with us today, our relic. How you doing, Dave?
Hey, how's it going?
And we have Maddie, or AKA Mutz.
Hey, yeah.
And in the background, the nice quiet guy is Jim. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing pretty well.
I called you nice, isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's
what's wrong with you, Chris.
Yeah, I know, it threw him off. He didn't know what to say. Nice? What? He's calling me nice?
I thought there was some other Jim on the line here.
Yeah, the new Jim, the nice Jim. So,
a little goatee. Yeah.
Let's see what we got going on. We got a lot of new stuff happening here with all of us. First, I'd just like to kind of talk about the newsletter that came out. We've gotten in the last month, Jim, wouldn't you say, like a couple, probably close to like 10 submissions from different people, from just people hanging our channel or have been coming to the site.
We've had great level participation. It's
great level. I mean, it's really been awesome. People submitting articles, research, ideas for videos and other things like that. And this month, we got a submission from a guy named Nick. His hacker Nick or whatever on the IRC is Ericon. He submitted a great article on a trust hormone, oxytocin, I believe it's pronounced, and we use that in the newsletter. So I'd just like to give him a shout-out. It was a great article, got a lot of feedback on that. So we look forward to seeing some more submissions. We have a couple more. I think you just sent me another one last night that you got. Jim, we'll be looking that over.
I think that one's pretty much ready to go, so we should be done with that pretty soon.
Yeah, I read it over. All the edits look good. I'm telling you, I think that one's going to be a nice blog post or a newsletter post. So keep them coming. We really appreciate the support from the community on that. What else? Dave, you got something going on, don't you, down in Kentucky?
Yeah, down in Louisville.
That sounds really bad.
Don't even.
You started it, now we're going to start going crazy and veer off to the PG again.
Yeah, I know. We're not doing it. Dave, you know the fact that scares me? Is that you're the one that just reined it in.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I take this stuff seriously, okay? Sometimes, I have to not act, and fight, the internal urges to yell out, bad words. That just
makes me very
Tourette
scared.
syndrome.
Yeah, well, but I can control my Tourette's. So, again, I'm F-ing myself.
Nice, real nice.
So what is going down in Kentucky?
So I'm going down to Louisville to help with. There's a Metasploit Unleashed class that Iron Geek put together, so we're going to be doing a 1-day-long session going through everything that is holy with Metasploit. So going through the whole Metasploit Unleashed class.
How many days?
It's just 1 day.
Just 1 day, and how many people you have signed up so far?
It's insane. Well, we were originally only anticipating, I think, like 30 or 40. But it got so big that we can't hold anymore. So we got 70 right now, and we have no more room for anybody else.
70. That is a huge
Dave,
class.
is the location changing?
The location did change, but we're still at capacity.
I see, because I think I blogged it and I used the old location, so that might be problematic.
Yeah, I'll make sure to send you the info on that, but it just got yesterday. The email just came out yesterday.
Great.
Yeah, we'll need to update the Twitter feeds and things like that with the new location. Amazing. That's great. Yeah,
it turned out really well.
I love the fact that people are encouraged to donate to HFC for this. This is a really nice effort on your half, I think.
Yeah, and recommended to donate, at least $10 to Hackers for Charity in order to register for the class. So, all the proceeds are definitely going to Johnny and the Hackers for Charity.
Yeah, I really like that.
That will help him out a lot. Is it
going to be recorded or streamed or anything, or?
I don't think there's any plans for that, but I can definitely ask Iron Geek.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions on our side as well. People asking if there'll be any recordings of the session.
I don't see why not. I mean, it's a free class. Maybe offer it up online on his site or ours or something like that. Would be a good idea.
Yeah, could be nice.
So just to kind of give a plug to that, if you want to check out the HFC, the website is hackersforcharity.org. If you're interested in checking out what Johnny's doing down there in Africa, hackersforcharity.org. And again, Relic, good job on that. Helping out with that. I
mean, definitely wouldn't be without Iron Geek, Pure Hate, and a lot of the other guys out there that have definitely contributed. There's multiple people involved in it that are just doing a great job.
Yeah, great. Really nice to hear this.
Good job, Relic, on that. And Mutz, we just launched the first OffSec hack challenge that went nuts. Seems like that really blew up. Everyone had more signups than we really anticipated on that. I know we're talking about doing more down the road. Where can people get information on that challenge and maybe future ones?
Well, we've got a new website up. It's called information-security-training.com. And basically that's where all the fun stuff happens, all the stuff that we can't put on our official blog. And generally all the hack challenges and all the tournaments that we'll be running will be running off that site. So I guess by the time this podcast comes out, our first challenge, which we dubbed How Strong Is Your Foo, will probably be over.
Okay, so you can check out that URL, or if you just go to Google and type in How Strong Is Your Foo, you'll get some information on the hack challenge. And I'm sure on the website we'll have more information for future hack challenges coming up down the road. So feel free to check that out. I think there's also some other new things that are happening. We were invited to be on the Secure a Bit podcast, mainly focusing on the offensive security courses, but we'll be talking a little bit about social engineer on there also. So we look forward to that. You can check that out at www.secureabit.com. Before we talk about our guest, I know we're all anxious to get to that, but I just want to mention our sponsors for the month. Last month when we launched that podcast, the EFF really came through for us, and we did shout out to them on last month's podcast. But I just wanted to mention a little more about what they did. They tweeted that podcast for us, really boosted up the downloads for that and the awareness of some of the things that were happening out there, and they continued to promote it even after the first day of the release. So we really want to thank those guys over there at the EFF. For their support and help with keeping not just our podcast, but just the information that they release out there from their Twitter feed and their website really is a very valuable information for the people in our community and many communities. But nice shout out to them. Of course, SpyAssociates.com, they continually support us with neat gadgets. I'm still playing with the gadgets that they gave us from last month, that bug, and I know we talked a lot about that. And I've had, the reason I don't have a new gadget is I'm still playing with this one, and I got a lot of requests for people to actually see it in action. So what I'm working on now is trying to come up with a scenario where maybe I can have a video of the thing in action and then being detected by the bug detector. But there's a lot of neat products that they have talked about sending us, so I don't have anything new to talk about from that sponsor, but just wanted to mention them because they really do support us a lot in what we do here. So SpyAssociates.com. Feel free to check them out there on their site and look at some of the neat gear they have. And also on our website, we have many things listed from them, reviews of the products that they sent us and how to use them. So feel free to check that out on our podcast page. Our guest today. Man, we got a really, really awesome guest, Kevin Hogan. Kevin Hogan is he's an expert in the art of persuasion and unconscious persuasion and body language. So we actually talked to him a little bit and about coming on the podcast, and he agreed to come on and give us a little information on his research and some of the things that he's written about in his books, and we'll be able to talk to him shortly as he logs on. So, guys, we have our guest now with us. Our guest is Kevin Hogan. He's the author of 19 books and is best known for the book, The Psychology of Persuasion, How to Persuade Others to Your Way of Thinking. I think that's a good title for us. Kevin's an expert in reading unconscious influence and also body language. He does a lot of public speaking, performs training all over the world in sales and marketing to some of the largest companies in the world. So today, Kevin's here to discuss with us a topic of unconscious influence and also body language. Kevin, nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to be here. And hello, guys.
Let me give you a little intro here. We got the whole group with us. There's 4 of us total, so you already know me, Chris.
Yeah.
We have Maddie.
Hi, Maddie.
Hi there.
And Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Hi there.
And Dave.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Chris, I think perhaps we should give Kevin like 2 or 3 examples of social engineering, like a quick 2-minute outline of how you would use social engineering in an engagement or how it can be used maliciously in a non-engagement type environment, so he gets a better frame of what we're trying to achieve.
Okay. I'll give you, let's say, like one of the most common, ones that are used on the market today would be like the spamming emails. You get an email, and believe it or not, you probably would never fall for this, but this happens every day, and people fall for this. You get an email that says one of 2 things. I'm a businessman from Africa that happens to have been left a massive sum of money, and I need help moving it out of the bank account because it's very unstable down here, and I'm willing to part with a 10% fee for you helping me move that through American banks. And all I need from you is my name and your name and phone number and your bank account information. And, they might not come out that direct up front. They start with little bits of gathering of information, and then as they get more and more eventually, and they might even be those type of attacks, they call them 419 scams. They actually have gotten pretty high level in the sense that they even have offices set up. People that fall for these, you'll go to a physical office, you'll meet with 2 people, real people in an office that dressed up, look like government officials, and they have a whole setup. It looks like it's a real deal. You sign contracts that say this is what's going to happen, and then, in essence, they send you fraudulent checks. You're supposed to cash those checks and wire the X amount of money to this account, and then you get to keep the percentage.
Right, and of course the checks bounce.
Checks bounce. You get in massive trouble for check fraud, and in the meantime, they got, $10,000, $20,000 wired to them.
This happens in our business, too, because we do publishing of products and books and things like that. So, like today, we just got a $2,500 chargeback because, the guy in England used a guy in Germany's credit card. It went through. And we're pretty diligent about stuff, but they are getting more sophisticated now about ripping people off, and they either end up with our products, which they can then sell on eBay, or use for torrents, something as simple as that. But or they can just but no matter what, they're getting people are it's an amazing thing what's going on out there.
Oh, it is, and people, despite the information that's out there, people fall for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, another one that's more closer to business, let's say, will happen where either we do this in a security audit when we're testing a company, or this is a real-life malicious attack where a social engineer might pretext himself or make believe he's something that he's not. Maybe one of the most famous accounts of this was in the 70s, a guy named Mark Rifkin. He was a tech support guy for a third-party company, and one of their largest clients was Sun Pacific Bank in California. And he was given access to very confidential areas of the bank because he said that he had repairs to do in that section. When he got in there, he was able to obtain the transfer code, which changed daily. And then upon leaving the bank, he made a quick phone call. He played up a part that he was a branch manager from a different branch and had to do a $10 million wire transfer. He wire transferred that $10 million to his bank account and then was able to buy diamonds in Russia, now pretexting himself as a Russian diamond buyer, and then selling those diamonds in California. This was all pretexting where he actually made believe he was these different characters, and in doing so with no proof but having legitimacy and confidence in his pretext, people fell for it right away. And he was able to move $10 million out of the bank and $10 million worth of diamonds before he got caught. So those things occur, now that's in the 70s, but those things occur more and more today, people dressing up like a UPS guy or like a tech support guy, and then gaining access into the company and being able to download information from a server or plant malicious files on a computer, key loggers and things like that, and able to gain access to the network, stealing data, and then intellectual information is either sold to competitors or it's used to damage the company in some way.
Right.
And a lot of those things, the people have to be very good, the social engineers, the malicious ones, and even the ones who help audit, have to be very good at persuasion. You know, you're walking into a company, and you are not who you say you are, but you have to try to, through your body language, your facial expressions, your actions, your words, convince the person that you are who you say you are, but without trying to sound too much, you know?
Sounds good. I have a total reframe now, so I think we're in good shape now.
What surprised me, both you, Kevin, and Dr. Langer, once we approached both of you and told you about the malicious aspects or the malicious tangents of your research, both of you sounded surprised. And to me, as a security professional, I guess I always look for the angle. I always look for, how to get in, how to push the right button. It seems like the malicious angle is the first angle that should jump in front of your face. And the power of persuasion is such a powerful tool.
Right. I think that Dr. Langer and myself are both very sensitive to the emotions that are attached to our names. So if I say the word Hitler and Chris in the same sentence, then Chris's name becomes associated with Hitler, and because there's such an emotional and volatile response to Hitler, it tends to get tied with Chris's name. So when you use words like malicious or, well, anything that has a really terrorist, say that we're talking about, just say that we use the word terrorist in any sentence, like, did you hear about the terrorist bombing today, Chris? Well, when the audience is listening to that, there is an emotional fear release that goes off in the person's brain. Cortisol is released, and it pumps adrenaline into the body, and cortisol, and all of a sudden people are not kind of freaked out. And what they do is they remember that specific name attached to that emotion, and it's not a conscious thing. It's all unconscious. And so I try to get people to choose their words a little more carefully when they're asking me a question, just because there's a lot of sensitivity as to this issue.
So, Kevin, maybe you can just kind of fill us in a little bit on your research when it comes to unconscious influence or some of the things that you focused on over the years.
Over the years, people have come to believe that it's the words that you say, the specific words that change people's minds, and so the salesman always wants a script, and the therapist wants a script, and scripting has its place, and there's benefits to having, words like, most plays and movies wouldn't do so well without a script. But life is not like a play in that it's not designed just to fit one specific need. So people try to, take a script into an office and they try to sell you something, or they try to change your mind about something. And people really believe that if you use the right words, all the right words, that everything is going to be okay. And there is some research that shows that sometimes that's true. But far more interesting to me and far more influential on what's going to happen in this conversation and every other situation that you experience out there, whether it's going to be interviewing somebody or trying to protect the company or any of those things. All of it has to do, it's much more the context, the environment, where the person is at, how people are dressed, the color of the walls, the color of the carpeting, the texture of the carpeting, the fluorescent versus standard light bulb overhead, the dimness of the lights, all of these things like that, the peripheral cues, the specific magazine that you're carrying when you're walking down the hallway, and how that specific magazine impacts or doesn't the person to, let you by, or, say hello, or go, oh, geez, I don't like that guy. And all these little teeny things are actually very, very huge in the persuasive process, especially prior to the communication. It sort of all sets a tone that gives us a first impression of somebody. And in your business, first impression is huge because you're in security, and so the person who's going to breach security of somebody's company has to make a specific impression, and it doesn't need to be a really great impression or a terrible impression, but it's got to be an impression that is designed mostly to be neutral or like invisible, say. And so all of these things are contextual, and of the things that they wear, the watches, what kind of glasses the person has on. I mean, that'll make a huge difference in how the people perceive them, and all of those kind of things. Does that kind of help a little, or does that just muddle it up more?
No, it doesn't. So I guess, Kevin, the question that I have when you were talking about your initial statements was about first impressions, is how then can people control that first impression and give people the idea of what we want to impress upon others?
So let me ask you a question. Can we get a specific context? Can this be like, I want to get into the company past the security person, and I would like to make a specific impression so I'm able to, say, get into the building or get past security without perhaps even showing my ID or whatever, something like that. Is that what you're talking about, or do you want to just talk about impressions in general, positive, negative, as far as communication?
I'd love to get to that level, of course. Maybe you can tell us both. Just general in a social setting, I think that even being able to master that skill of what impression to give, but of course our focus being in security is what avenues would people use if I wanted to get past a security guard without having to flash a fake ID or just get right into the building as if I belong there.
Right. Okay. So let's do both. So say that somebody's coming to your company or you're going. No, let's do it this way. You're going somewhere. You're going to talk to somebody, and you want to make a specific impression. The first thing people always assume is that you should be smiling all the time, and that is one of those big errors that people make. So actually, when people smile too much, if it's not like the person at the religious bookstore, then we always we put a question mark after stuff like that. Right. So the big smile is a bad thing. One of the things that is important in the first impression is how close you get in proximity to another person. And now I'll change this when it comes to the second part, which is the security type issue. But in face-to-face impression, what you'll do is people will get too close, which in the security issue is actually a good thing. But in communication, just for liking and acceptance, it's not such a good thing. You want to be that handshake distance away. People tend to get too close. It tends to cause people to say no to whatever it is you're going to ask. Another thing about first impression is that people tend to be very positive toward mirrors. So they see themselves in the mirror, they see themselves in their children, they see themselves in their parents, and whenever somebody looks like you or talks like you or has the same first name, and you might want to write this down as something to trigger my memory in a second. We'll talk about the person's name. If the person's name is the same person at security, then it's going to be a lot easier to get the person by. But we'll come back there in a second. But so that your name and how you say your name, is it Rich, Dick, or Richard? Okay, all those things make differences on the first impression. The kind of shoes. If you're going to talk with a woman, women look at shoes as a huge point of discovery about a person's personality. They really pay attention to shoes. Women are very discriminating about men in general. They don't like how we look as a rule, and if we're average or looking, they see us as actually much less than average looking. Men actually are much.
I have no hope then.
We're out of luck. I'm telling you, me too, man. So there's a lot. Those things are first impression related. Then you have all of your badges that we wear. We wear, maybe a person wears a necklace or a cross or a ring or a watch. There's a lot of people that'll wear a tattoo. They'll have a tattoo on their arm and a short sleeve shirt, and somebody can see that. Those are things that draw a great deal of attention. And so generally speaking, the fewer badges that a person has on, like watches and rings and stuff like that, the less attention will go to the person. So if you're trying to make a flashy, impression, you want to have badges. But if you don't want to make an impression, either positive or negative, then you would want to have no no identifying badges, no crosses, no Star of David, no religious symbols or political symbols or American flags or any of those kind of things that people wear on a regular basis. The shirt that you wear says a lot, and does it match sort of the person that I'm talking to? Is it similar to theirs? Is it similar in color? People go, oh, he's a smart guy. Why? Because he thinks just like I do, And the reason I know he's a genius is because he agrees with me on everything that I say. And so so all of the things that happen in that first 2 seconds, that first 3 or 4 seconds, that first impression is huge. And so you got to think every single thing about you is going to matter in the person's adjudication of who you are. So I even get down to the point where if I'm going to meet somebody, I know where I want to stand in contrast to that person. So if I'm shaking your hand, say, and so we're going to shake hands there just like a typical right hand shake, I want you to be on that right-hand side of me. So I'm standing and I'm looking at you, and I want you on my right-hand side, and I want you to have me on your right-hand side. And the reason is that because when we look off to the right, in right-handed people this is at least, when you look off to the right, what happens? The more of the left brain is activated because of the way that the eyes hook up into the brain. So more of the left brain is activated, and the left brain sort of stores sequential stuff and sort of data and information, and this is a big generality, but just by and large, it's just pretend like it was logical, okay, and spatial. There's a lot of exceptions to this, but just pretend that. And then if I have you standing off to my left, and I'm looking over on that side, and I have to look at you, and then you have to look at me over your left, again, assuming you're a right-handed person. Now what happens is that triggers off more thinking and more processing in the right-hand side of the brain. And generally speaking, the right-hand side of the brain stores more biographical stuff, and most of the biographical stuff that it stores is bad. Most of the memories that we have, strongly wired into our brains that give us unconscious conditioning, non-conscious conditioning that cause us to be able to drive the car safely. All that comes from fear and adjusting for fear along the way. It didn't come because we did something right.
Now,
so go ahead, please.
No, there's so much there in that. I think we could probably have like a college course just in that opening paragraph there, but. I had 3 things that you said that really struck my interest, and maybe the one that just kept coming up in my head is if we were dealing with a left-handed person, would everything that you just said reverse?
Not necessarily. When you're looking at a left-handed person, you look at their desk, and so whichever, there's like 5 of us on the telephone today, so there's about a 50-50 shot that one of us is a lefty. And if you look at your desk, there's one side of your desk is clean. It's ridiculously clean. It's almost spotless. And the other side is a disaster. It's got emails that you've printed out. It's got reports and books and your iPod. And, it's just got a bunch of junk over there. And so here's the deal. If you're right-handed, the side of your desk that looks terrible is the left side of your desk as you're sitting at your desk or your coffee table or wherever you're sitting. And that's consistent with about 95% of the right-handed population. So if you were coming in to talk to me and you wanted to get me to say yes, you could choose to sit across from my desk in front of the clean, really pristine side of my desk where everything is clean, or you could sit by the side that's all junky and a disaster and causing me stress today. So I would encourage people, if you want to make a good impression, if you want to make an accepting impression, if you want people to just accept you and say yes to you, you want to sit in front of that desk where it's clean, whether it's left or right-handed, because that'll give you the clue. And this is almost always true. Now, with left-handed people, it's a coin flip. It's all related to Baraka Center, and you're right, a college course would do good here. But we'll skip over all that. It's a coin flip, but the way you can tell is where's the person's desk at their office or in the back room or wherever, and just look and see where all the junk is. If the junk is on the left side, then everything I told you is still correct. If the junk is on the right side, just flip it. Does that make sense, or was it a little complicated?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of relate to that, I'm left-handed, and I looked at my desk, and the entire left hand of my desk is destroyed, and the entire right side of my desk is clean.
Okay, so you're organized like a normal right-handed person. Broca center in your brain is on the left-hand side, which is, language and logic and all that stuff there. So you're organized just exactly like a right-handed person, which is very normal. That's cool. And I would communicate with you and try to persuade you the exact same way I would a right-handed person. But if it was the opposite, then I would switch my entire approach.
Well, I'm left-handed. It just
right.
my thought pattern, I guess, is everything on my left-hand side is completely papers and things like that. And
it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My right-hand side is normal.
Yeah. So when it comes to like if you were sitting in an audience and you were watching me from the audience, if you were looking at me and then you sat on the left-hand side of the audience, that's where you're going to learn the most information, just like a right-handed person. Whereas if you switch and you go all the way over to your right-hand side of the audience, all the people over there are going to have a bad experience that day, and they always wonder, did you and me see the same concert? Did we see the same speaker? Did we see the same meeting? Well, no, you didn't, because one side was processed with almost entirely non-conscious information, which is most of the right brain, more of the right brain, and the other side was processed with logical thinking and rational thought and decision-making and all that kind of stuff, which is left brain completely, almost completely. I've got to be careful about generalizations, but but that's the deal. And so people go to the same event, but they experience very different things because of how they sat, where they sat, and how their brain is organized. And it is truly fascinating.
I want to ask, because now assuming from a security standpoint, I might not be in the position, let's say most likely, now unless my pretext as a social engineer is a salesperson or someone who would gain access to the office of the CEO or CFO for a meeting. But generally, let's say to keep it simple, a pretext is going to be the tech support guy, UPS guy, delivery guy, someone who just needs to get in the door. And when I approach somebody, is there a quick way to discern what the good side to stand on is, or what the good way to approach is for the maximum effectiveness of persuasion, or how would one do that right up front?
Most people will do it for you. As if you can be stationary, people will come up to you and they will tend, almost all right-handed people will tend to put you off to their right-hand side. For example, if you're looking forward right now, say that you're looking at a computer screen or your Skype screen or whatever, so look forward and just go, oh, okay, so now this is normal. I'm looking forward. Now just real quick, look over to the right and don't turn your head, but just use your eyes, okay? So just look peripherally and do it for about 15 seconds and just notice how you feel. Nothing. It's like, whatever. But then look over and to the left, okay?
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, in most people, there's a little thing in the chest that kind of gets it kind of feels kind of weird, a little anxiety, a little tension, a little fear, that kind of stuff is triggered. And it's because we're accessing right brain, and it has nothing to do with anything you were just thinking about. It's all non-conscious junk over there that's getting triggered off. So the UPS guy, generally speaking, you're going to see people approach you, not just the UPS guys, sometimes the FedEx guys too. You're going to see everybody pretty much try to get you on their right-hand side naturally, okay, naturally. And the funny thing is, if you put yourself in a car and you sit next to your spouse, it's very, very easy for the person who's driving to have a rational conversation, because off to their right is their spouse or their friend or their buddy, but the person in the passenger seat of the car has a completely different experience because they're looking off to their left and talking to their left and speaking, even into the left ear.
I can't let my wife hear this. And she'll say, look, he gave me an excuse for being irrational.
And the amazing thing is that if for example, say that you whisper, honey, would you do X for me? And don't say X, but put in something intelligent.
Right.
Okay, using X as a variable only. If you and you whispered into her left ear, I think it was for taking out the trash. It was like 19% of the people agreed. But if you whispered it into their right ear, which is processed by the left brain, then 50% of the people would say yes. And it's that important. Then this one thing, this one hemispheric difference in how we process information, right versus left, is so huge. And just walk around, as you go to see people this week, just look at their desks and notice how almost everybody's desk, left side disaster, right side pristine clean, and it's like if you were to cut it down the middle, you'd go, this is two different people. And it is. It's very much two different people. Conscious on the right-hand side of the desk, non-conscious on the left-hand side of the desk.
And that was a very interesting test because I did it. I'm sitting here in front of my desk, and even a slight glancing, over to the right, I was looking pretty far peripheral vision. And as I started going to the left, it actually started irritating me.
Yeah, when people, if you do that for 2 minutes, the typical response of people is I actually feel afraid, or I'm scared, or I'm nervous, or it's freaking me out, stuff like that. When people look off to the right, they go, okay, when can I stop now? I'm getting bored. Okay, Kev, I've had enough. Right? And it's two very different things. So just this one piece of knowledge, if you walk away with nothing else today, this one piece of knowledge, if you learn to apply it every day, try to get people off to your right, be off to their right. And you have a much more logical, much more rational, much more intelligent conversation, and business gets done. If you put the phone up to your left ear, you're going to have a more emotional conversational. That could be good, by the way. It could be a lot of positive emotions, intensity, excitement, and all that. If you put the telephone or the receiver up to your right ear, you're going to have a much more logical, rational conversation. You're going to acquire data much more neutrally. You're going to analyze it more consciously in thought as opposed to thoughts. Huh?
I just moved the phone as you were talking. I said, I don't want to start crying in the middle of the podcast, so I moved the phone to my right.
I hear you. But
that is very interesting. Now, Jim, Dave, Maddie, unless you have a question on this, I had two more questions, but I don't want to move on from this because it's so interesting.
Well,
is it okay, guys?
Related to this, one of the things that's crossing my mind is a lot of this is so subtle. How do you, when you're making use of this knowledge, how do you keep that front of mind so that way you can take advantage of it?
Well, once you do it for 20 or 30 or 40 times and you're starting to pay attention, every time you walk into any store, you observe the behavior in other people, or a restaurant particularly. If you look at people who are connecting at a restaurant and they're like, you can usually tell if they're first-time daters or if they've been married forever. But what's harder to tell is the girl going to go out with the guy again? And if people are seated just like we're talking and it's right to right, at an early date, it's very tough for that woman to say no, for example, to the man the next time around. So as you start to do this, for me, I always sit in the booth. I'm sitting, if I'm in a booth, I get there early and I will slide myself all the way over to the wall of the booth. So the person who comes in and sits opposite me isn't going to sit to the wall. They're going to sit in the center, and now I'm off to their right-hand side automatically. So I just create situations to where I'm optimally set for people to work with me, and then they like me in general. It's just later after they get to know me that they don't like me. But at first, that impression is the huge thing, is winning it first. So it does take a little practice to sort of become familiar with it, and once you are familiar with it, it just becomes habit like driving the car or swimming or anything else, and you never think about it again on purpose. This is just what you do. And when things go wrong, the very first thing I'll look for in conversation, like if something's going wrong, I'll look, okay, where's the person standing and where am I? And I'll say, hey, by the way, are you a lefty? I do this. Or if somebody's communicating and the information is bizarre information, and I'll say, are you left-handed by any chance? And they'll go, yeah, how'd you know? And I'm like, just guess. Okay. So anyway, that'll help you out. And it does take a little bit of practice,
Yeah, I can see that. One of the other things that you mentioned that really interested me, and I have a question on this. Personally, one of my areas of research, I love Dr. Paul Ekman's work in microexpressions, and I really am fascinated by that whole science. And he did some research into the difference between fake and real smiles.
Yep.
And you mentioned this before about smiling all the time, and he actually scientifically proved that it's almost impossible to fake a real smile because there's this nerve, this ocular nerve surrounding the eyes that squints or pinches together when someone smiles for real. And that nerve is not able to be, that muscle and that nerve that's attached to it is not able to be triggered manually. It's done automatically when someone smiles for real. So with that knowledge, I guess my question is on what you were saying before. Is it better to just approach a situation really with not trying to force a smile, or appear that way, or is it better to still try to have a smile on your face, or when do you know when it's good or bad to be smiling?
In general, I think the best approach, like you're walking in the door and you're going to meet the secretary or something like that, the best approach is to do three things. The first is to keep your lips parted, just a little bit, like 1/8 of an inch, just lips parted as you're going up to meet somebody, and then I raise my eyebrows when I'm going to meet somebody, and this is all intentional, but I don't think about it anymore. In other words, this has sort of become a habit pattern of mine. So I've got my lips slightly parted, so if somebody's taking a picture or I'm going to be on video, I won't look terrible. People with their mouths closed don't look good. People with fake smiles don't look good. As you walk up to the gal at the receptionist desk, you raise your eyebrows and you're sort of taking in this person, and then you give her a little smile, just a very small, not like a full, 5th grade smile in the picture of your kid,
Right.
That one, don't do that. That's exactly what you were just talking about, right, with Ekman?
Yes.
And so instead, just sort of give a brief smile, and then and then remove the smile and just go into business. And then the person knows that you're a nice person, or they sense that you're a nice person, that you're being polite and kind, and that you're a good person to talk to right now. And that's how you generally handle it. And then the next time I smile is when they say something interesting or that I like, or that it actually is amusing, and it just makes me smile. But the fake smile is so easy to detect, and it creates such... People think that they're able to make a good impression with a phony smile, but you really don't. You just create a very discomfort level between the two people. The person gets those little butterflies in their chest, and they're all this stuff happens non-consciously. Nobody ever thinks about it, but they just go, there's something about that guy I didn't like.
Yeah, that exactly is what Dr. Ekman promotes, really, that with fake smiles you actually damage the relationship more than help it. But what's the purpose? I mean, like when you say keep your mouth open a little bit, obviously there has to be some limitations to that. You can't walk up with your mouth gaping open, and you don't want to look like you're trying to to yawn or something. So what's the purpose of that, and how do you know the...
Just the lips a little parted at the front. And the reason is if you look at people, most people's jaws don't align perfectly, and so when people close their mouths, there's usually a misalignment. Only in the best-looking people, the top 20% of attractive people, have symmetry on both sides of the face. Well, symmetry is easier to fake, and I do this all the time because I have the non-symmetrical face, unfortunately. I am totally out of luck in all contexts in the world. So I've learned to keep my lips apart, and by keeping just a little bit, just a very small amount, it's almost like you wouldn't notice it, but by keeping your lips apart, your teeth don't come together, they don't set into the position where they normally would, and now you look symmetrical. So all of a sudden, instead of being a 5 on a scale of 1 to a 10 in that girl's eyes, you're now a 7 because of 1/8 of an inch.
So does this play into our thing that we always try to do, Chris, on how to get free chicks?
No, it doesn't. And we don't always try to do that. That's you.
There you go. Right, smart response, too.
He starts off every podcast with promising people how to get free chicks if they listen to the whole podcast. And we never do it because I tell them that is not real social engineering. We'll never discuss it as part of the podcast.
Okay, well, I'll quit now.
And then 3 podcasts ago, we interviewed the CEO from OkCupid because he did some really interesting research. And then Dave was justified and vindicated that we finally discussed free chicks. But
OkCupid has done the best job of... Everybody listening to this call should go to OkCupid and check out their data on what is currently, culturally, the most valuable tools for acceptance and getting responses. I mean, it is almost always counterintuitive. There's a few exceptions, but generally speaking, the things that people think are going to work don't work. Smiles aren't as effective as they used to be. People looking directly at in a photograph, not always as amazing as you thought. OkCupid, they do a great job.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what brought us to them. Was their research data. We were just amazed by it, and had to talk to the guy there, Sam, about the research that they did and how they collected it, and very, very interesting stuff.
By the way, the same thing about Paul Ekman's work, Telling Lies, and all of his work that he's done is he is truly one of my heroes, and just people should read his work. It's a little bit dry, but if you really want to get the stuff on microexpressions, boy, there's nobody is even as close to understanding at this level as he is.
Yeah, he is just amazing. I've talked to him a couple times, and the understanding that he has of, what's amazing to me about, I don't want to get into that topic, because really it's one of my personal favorites, and I can talk about it for hours, but just how the whole emotions of people, so that's why it made me think about this when you said that about smiles, is that you can actually affect other people's emotions around you by the emotion that you exhibit on your face.
Exactly.
And that's why I wanted to get clarification on the smile bit, because a fake smile, like you said, people, even if they don't know logically that they're discerning it, inside their psyche, they know that this is a fake smile, and it turns them off. And that's why I was curious just to get more detail from you on exactly how to do that in a way that where now I'm not turning off the person that I'm trying to persuade or trying to get to know or build a trust relationship with. Because if I do that, then I just kind of shot myself in the foot there.
Exactly. If you really want to do something in addition to a soft smile and then return to normal, it's looking curious. Looking curious almost accomplishes the same thing as a smile because it shows interest in the person that's being spoken to or communicated with. And so if you think about a person looking at you curiously and not like interrogatingly, is that a word? But
I don't think you made it
with intent to interrogate. But the curious look, like, oh yeah, that's cool. That look right there. We love to be the answer to somebody's question. So curious accomplishes almost the same thing as a smile.
That makes sense. Now I had another question for you on your opening statements there. Way back, well, I shouldn't say way, because this is like just the early 90s. There was a guy named Dr. Kerry Johnson. He was one of the biggest sales gurus of that time. He talked a lot about mirroring. So mirroring people, but not in a crazy stalker kind of way, but in a method where if you notice someone used a particular hand gesture or facial expression or a verbal cue, that you start to pick that up, not in a mockingbird kind of way, of course, then you irritate the person, but maybe in a way that is closely resembling what they're doing to make them feel comfortable with you, because people feel very comfortable with things that are similar to them. Is that what you were referring to when you talked about mirroring someone's actions in order to make them feel comfortable?
Right. The mirroring, synchronization, is what it's the term in psychology that we use for that. And it's really, it's amazing. You would think that if you sort of replicate closely another person's actions to them, that they would go, oh, what are you doing to me? But the fact is that we really like people who sort of are doing those, the like posture, the like hand actions. So if they reach for a glass of wine, I reach for my fork and I take a bite as they drink their wine. That's the same thing. It's the same exact physical gesture. And I did some research on this, back in the late 90s. Kerry Johnson's book, by the way, it's I don't even know if you can get it anymore, but his first book on rapport was real good, Instant Rapport, I think.
I have that book.
Yeah, real good book. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, is that going to be for real? But it turns out it actually tests out, amazing. If you mirror somebody, and specifically, it would be sitting in the same posture, just noticing where their knee is, and your knee will end up in the same place over the other knee or not. The open posture, if it's open, closing it up a little if theirs is closed. If they're leaning forward a little bit, you feel free to do that. And by the way, here's a one for a good impression. Don't lean into the other person when you're sitting across the table from them until they have done that for you and to you. In other words, they're sitting straight, you're sitting straight, they come forward to you, and now you can go forward and communicate with them as if they're telling you a secret.
Why not do it beforehand?
Because space is so, we don't like people touching. Let me give you a quick example as to how this all works. Think about when you're at home, okay, and you have a chair at the table, at the dining room table, at your supper table, wherever you eat, the dinette, anything. There is a chair that you sit in every single day to have dinner, true?
Yes.
Okay, now, salesman comes in the door and says, hey, Chris, where would you like me to sit? And you say, oh, well, anywhere, okay? And he says, okay, thanks, and then he sits in your chair. How you feeling?
Yeah, very good, actually. That's interesting. I never really thought about that. I have the same chair I've been sitting in for like 8 years.
We don't want anybody touching our stuff. We don't want people We don't want people sitting in my chair. It's like they can sit anywhere they want. They can sit in the wife's chair, the husband's chair, the kid, but don't sit in my chair.
Yep.
Okay? And so when people come to my house, I say, sit there.
Yep.
Because I want to still like the person. So, and we're very territorial. If you're sitting next to a person, so, and this will probably come into valuable use with security. If a man is sitting next to a woman, and men are incredibly possessive, territorial people. Even if he's never met this woman, if he sits next to her for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes or more, then he will start to feel territorial about her, to where if somebody were to come and yell at her or get angry with her or get upset with her, that he would actually take it as a personal affront to him. That emotion kicks in because this woman has been sitting there. And we've tested this out at boot camps and trainings and things like that. And we'll ask the person, how do you feel if she walks away and sits over there by that guy now? What would you feel? And it doesn't matter if she's attractive. It doesn't matter anything about her. Even if she's irritating to the guy, he still is protective of her. We become very territorial. So stay out of my space until I invite you in. And the way I invite you into my space is to get closer to you. Cool?
That's very interesting.
Yeah, thinking about ways that could be used instead of just happening. That's what's fascinating about so much of this is so much of this, it sounds like it happens on its own, but ways of interacting with it and creating situations and creating an environment for this sort of activity to really be successful is really fascinating.
There's an interest. I mean, just running through my mind, there's an interest. If I were in your business, perhaps it would be possible that I would work with a woman, say if I was trying to have a woman gain confidence, a specific woman gain confidence in an office building, I would literally probably sit her next to a guy in the lunchroom and have somebody else on my team come up and yell at her, and not yell loudly, but just kind of get into a conversation, become irritated with her, and kind of insult her after about 5 minutes, and then have that guy walk away, and then have the woman have the guy that you're trying to gain the confidence with that's sitting next to the woman. It'll be quite easy because he'll feel very territorial and he'll want to help her. He'll want to follow through and be valuable to her at this point. Whereas right off the bat, it wouldn't have happened.
Wow. Yeah, we have to try that, Jim.
You can be the woman.
I recommend hiring.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, they won't feel very territorial when it comes to me sitting there. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess that was kind of what was going through my head, is what Jim mentioned was, all this seems to be by chance. So if we're observant, we see these things, we notice them. Right now we're more educated, so we see that, and then we can react in a certain way to that. But creating those situations, many times, whether you're auditing a company, because companies will hire us to actually perform the same attacks on them that a malicious person would perform, but with the intent, not with the intent, of course, of doing harm, but with helping them to report back and say, hey, this worked. We need to educate your staff on X, Y, and Z. But the bad guys will also do these, will do similar attacks on companies. So, my question that was going through my head, like similar to Jim, was how do you create these situations? Because you really don't have much time. I mean, if a social engineer is trying to gain access to a company, there's not usually going to be a period of time where they're sitting with someone, unless, of course, the pretext is very lengthy, and maybe it's done because the access that needs to be gained is something that is very high level. So you might actually build a whole storyline where there's emails and phone calls to set up a quote-unquote sales appointment, and then you gain access to the building that way. But many times the gaining of access will be done through something where you need to build trust and rapport and confidence, but it has to be done within under a minute. You have less than 30 seconds to walk up and accomplish all those tasks and to be given access without argument.
Well, you guys are experts at this. A few things come to mind. I think we touched on this maybe before we began the call today. But whenever a person, just think of yourself at backstage at a concert, for example. Take yourself out of the security business and out of the relationship thing that we were talking, just a different context. Put yourself at the backstage of a concert, and if you want to go, McCartney comes to town, and it's like, I want to see McCartney. If I really want to, I'm just going to dress up as maintenance. And, when people appear to be there, when they're carrying a mop, when was the last time you ever stopped a person carrying a mop or a mop with a bucket?
Never.
Nobody has ever stopped a maintenance man. If you have a mop and a bucket and it smells like pine sol, you let the guy by no matter what, especially if he's moving, And so that's one thing. Another thing is if a person's carrying anything like a magazine that has a little label on it, like as if it was shipped to the address, like this is already at this address, and it's sort of it's kind of crisp, but it's maybe got a little corner bent. And the magazine is related to that specific person's business. So you're at 3M, say, and you have the 3M Weekly magazine there. Or if you're going into Hughes and you have their current issue of their company magazine, you're walking in, it's rolled up under you've rolled it, but everybody recognizes it because everybody saw it, and so you've now primed what's called priming. It's all for another phone call. But the non-conscious mind picks this cue up as, this person belongs here, and the reason I know that, even though I'm actually not thinking, I'm just reacting, is because he's got our company news magazine in his hand, and it's just rolled like a baseball bat. But I recognize it because I read it this morning. None of those thoughts actually happen in consciousness, but that's just like that split second. It's obvious the person's there. And if the person is carrying a box or carrying, not a briefcase, because that means the person could be coming in, but anything that would make sense in the context, like say they're carrying a couple of reams of paper, or they're carrying the company employee handbook, or they're carrying a bag lunch, if that's something that would happen at that office. Those are the kind of things where it's just obvious. And then actually approaching somebody and going up and to somebody say anything, just say, have you seen John yet today? No, John who? Oh, forget it. And then you just walk by, something like that. Anything that just is simple and trigger, and you don't pick a name like, Herbert, because there probably isn't one there, and that'll raise attention. But you go with things like that, and you got to think a little bit ahead of time whenever you're going to try and do a security breach like this. Because you got to prepare a few things for priming. You don't have to over-prepare, though. It's not as hard to walk around backstage if you appear that you belong. If you appear angry, this is one of the things we used to play with at camps. Is I would appear angry and then walk into places I shouldn't walk into, and it was great. If you look angry, people don't stop you. If you're walking very quickly and you're angry, nobody stops you.
What's interesting, everything you're saying, it lends to the topic of what we call pretexting in our business, where you're going to play a certain role, whether that be the janitor or a sales guy or a guy who just belongs backstage, whatever that is, that's your pretext. But it's not just playing a part. You actually have to act out the whole part, how they would dress, what they would have in their hands, what they would be carrying with them, how they would walk, what would be their whole demeanor. These things you have to completely understand. So that way when you, like you said with the magazine, would an employee be carrying that magazine, the 3M internal journal, and then how would they walk, what would be their demeanor? All these things would point to the fact that, yes, I do belong here, I have confidence that I belong here, I believe I belong here, and that kind of transmits out to the people that you're trying to transmit that out to.
That's a great word, too, pretexting. I love that. I don't know where that was coined, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, I don't, Jim, do you know where that I think that was coined within the security field, but I'm not 100% sure.
I love it. I'm going to steal it if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Actually, there's some information on it on our site on it.
What is your website?
It's social-engineer.org.
Cool. Social-engineer.org. Cool. Okay, thanks.
And I'll send you a link to that. You can take a look at some of the details on that there.
And if you get a pop-up, just hit yes.
Nice.
You got it.
I don't know why we let him on. Sometimes I wonder, but nice.
And I'll fill in my email and everybody else I know too.
Yeah, that's great. So, we'll never have another guest again, thanks to Dave. Appreciate your time. Oh, man, this has been really, really interesting to us here. It seems like there's just so much to learn on this aspect.
What's surprising for me is just that the fact that there's so much to learn about the human mind and really what you can do with it and play with it in order to get a specific outcome. I mean, I would have never thought by, talking to someone in a different ear or, where their stuff is placed on their desk, you can learn information about them. So it's pretty interesting how the brain works and in different ways you can manipulate it.
If there's a couple things that are worth, as we finish up the call, just realize that A, most people are on autopilot, and B, most people are playing their role, whatever their role is at work, and they don't play any other role except for that role. And so if they're the gatekeeper, their job is to keep the gate, but they don't play any other role. So just remember that when you're meeting somebody, they're on autopilot within their role, and anything that invades autopilot, they're not thrilled with that. So you want to fit within their reality, their framework, so they don't leave reality. If they leave their autopilot, they're non-conscious, then they start to ask questions, become curious, this is like, how to be a thief 101, but I'm not sure if we should put this out there, but basically people are on autopilot within their role, and as long as a person's within their role, you see the woman, so, hey, are you a mom? If it's obvious, she's pregnant, okay? Although, don't make the mistake that I did one time. No, I'm not pregnant. Oh, shoot. Gosh,
yes.
That's a shame. Okay, so...
I think we've all done that once.
Oh, yeah, one time, exactly.
More than once, yeah.
But it will become obvious. So things like that are pretty cool. So if you keep a person in their role, then they're on autopilot. They're not thinking. They're the person driving the car, of which that person does not think until there's a reason to think about traffic, until traffic becomes an issue. So if you revolve around that person's reality as you're intersecting their life, sort of for the next 2 seconds, then everything's going to be fine. But as soon as you raise a flag that requires thought, that thinking, then they're not on autopilot anymore. And now they have to figure out what's unusual, what's different, why are you screwing up my life? I was on autopilot doing fine until you walked in. And now you're in trouble. So you're caught. So just think of people as role players all the way through, and that they're familiar with their role, they're there, and as long as you keep them in their role, the chances are that everything is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Fine being the fact that you're going to successfully rip off this company.
Yeah, well, or, in our case, maybe audit them and be able to bring that to someone's attention.
Let me write that down. Audit. Synonym.
Yeah, that's when someone hires us to do a social engineering audit, again, the purpose is we come in and then we say, basically just what you said, this is nice, we can use some of that wording. These people are such on autopilot. We kind of laugh at this. We were talking about this one podcast, how I think it was with Ellen Langer, scripting. You call your cell phone company, you're really ticked off, they messed up on the bill, something terrible, you got charged hundreds of dollars you shouldn't have been charged, and you're really upset, and you call them to complain, and they can't do anything to help you. And granted, at the end, you're so upset, and the person will still say, have we been able to successfully help you today? Your business, and it's like, are you kidding me? And you just want to reach through the phone because these people are such on autopilot that they have to read that end of the script before they hang up. And, Ellen made some good points that when people are on this autopilot, they go through life and they don't really think through the things that occur, around them. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say most people are on autopilot most of the time in their life, at home, at work, and most people really aren't consciously going about, but they're responding to stimulus in the environment. Very few people, seriously, because it's stressful to be in conscious mind. It's stressful to be thinking, to be analyzing and to computing stuff. It requires thought. It's stressful. It creates tension in the body. People don't like it. We're animals. We want to be comfortable. We don't want to be in anxiety or fear or pain. We want to be comfortable. And that's pretty much everything in Persuasion. Is the goal is to find pain, create a trigger, hit the pain trigger. You show the person the solution. Say, oh, by the way, this will take care of that pain. You solve their pain, and then, you've now brought them back to status quo, and they love you.
Yeah, very interesting. Jim, I think you had had an interesting question.
A lot of the things that we've talked about here today have been focused around in-person interaction, live interactions. What about taking some of the same concepts and then applying them to, say, text conversations, written conversations? Do any of the same principles apply?
Well, first of all, I'm not an expert in this field, but a few thoughts come to mind, and realizing that this is not my necessarily, persuading people with text, yes, but when you're saying text, you're not talking about a book or a magazine. You're talking about email and texting like on a telephone, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so emoticons are incredibly useful. You can say anything, and type in say. I use it too. You can type anything you want in a text, and as long as you finish it with a smile, a smiley face, it's really hard to get too angry with whatever the person just said. And so emoticons, letting people know that you are aware enough of their emotions that you're not trying to hurt their feelings with whatever it is you just wrote. Because remember, the person's going to read whatever you, and you already know this, that they're reading what you wrote, but 50% of what they're reading was in their mind before they read your text or they read your email or your PDF. So you're meeting a person in their mind, not with your text. It's never accepted. It's not accepted as it is. It's not accepted as data. It's accepted as an emotional match to whatever the person's emotionally feeling at the moment. Because there is no stimulus aside from this data right in front of us, this text or this email. So, I can't tell you which emotions and emoticons are going to be most valuable. I haven't studied that. I think it would be a very cool study to do.
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe we'll get you and Sam Yagan to do the OK
I'd love
Cupid
to.
guy.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
That would be interesting research there.
And it's doable too. Yep.
I guess kind of to wrap up all these thoughts. One of the things that a lot of our listeners that come to this podcast hear all of these things. They begin to recognize them, like we did today. You talked about our desk. I'm sure every single one of us looked at where we were sitting and saw something similar to what you were saying. When we looked to the right, to the left, I guess in a sense that the bad guys might use and have been using some of these skills. How does one protect from being manipulated or persuaded in a bad way?
Wow. Okay. Well,
that's a very heavy question, isn't it?
That's a lengthy conversation. But let's just do a couple things, okay? People are terrible at understanding risk. So when I ask someone to do something, they really don't know what the real risk or reward payoff is involved. And so so we need to teach people. You need to teach your clients. You guys do at social-engineer.org. Yeah.
Yes.
You guys want to educate your clients to have people that are on autopilot a little less often and that ask a few more questions. And because people are appealing to specific things, either to an emotional state within a person's role or to calm the person's mind and to set them at ease. Either way, it's worth changing things up a little bit. And the analogy would be, drive a car home a different way from work and try it. It is not an easy thing to do. Your brain just does not want to do that because it drives the same way every single time. You'd never remember the trip home because you were busy talking to other people in your mind. Yeah. So to just shake it up, if I'm the boss of 25 or 30 people who are gatekeepers or people who could be compromised with some information, I would just teach them just to, when you see another person, if you haven't seen that face or if it's still new within 30, 60 days, don't doubt the person, but just ask questions to be curious and to ask the person. So don't ask them how they're doing. That's a bad question. Ask them what they've been up to. I think if you go back to the very beginning of the call, maybe not, but I usually ask people what you've been up to, because, how you're doing it causes people to lie instantaneously. Okay, how you feeling? How you been? Oh, I've been great. Okay, well, so now I'm in lying mode already. Yeah. All right. So instead I always say, so what have you been up to lately? What did you do today that was interesting? Or if it's my family, I'll try to manipulate them completely and I'll say, so what did you do today that was good? I already know it was a terrible day, because he went to school. What do you think, Dad? It was good?
Right.
So I'll say, I'll remember that one.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people off autopilot and into a different reality, and it's hard to train people to do this without you doing it yourself as the supervising person or as the manager of this area or this group. And
so that really ties in well, though, because I tell you, one of our first, I think it was our first podcast, we talked to a gentleman who was law enforcement. He was a sheriff, a deputy sheriff for many years, and he was heavy into the interrogation aspect of the job. And one of the things he said that you want to do when you, and again, we're not talking about interrogation, but we use that just even asking questions, is to ask questions that people just can't simply answer yes or no. Now you do that, and then it's easy to produce a lie or to stay in that mode of being on autopilot. If you say to someone like you said, like, hey, what's up? Oh, well, yeah, what's up? That's a general response. There's no depth to it there. But I like that, what you said. Asking people a specific question about their day forces them to come up with an answer. Interesting.
Give people 2 pieces of paper out of a magazine or off the internet, 2 ads, 2 sales letters. And sales letter A has testimonials that are from John Q. and Jane R. and Toby L. and Michael P. Okay, and the other one, if you go to kevinhogan.com, you'll see something that is extremely unusual. We'll see that we overuse an abundance of testimonials. There's probably 200 testimonials on the front page, and it looks really bogus until you look at the testimonial, and then you go, wait a second, he's got the address, the website of almost every single person who has a testimonial, and it's Brian Latta, it's Sonia Lenzo, it's April Braswell, and then the city that they live in, and the state, and then their website. So whenever somebody sends a testimonial to us, we won't post it if we can't post their name and address. Not everybody has a website.
Right.
If you don't have their name and address, we won't post it. So if I'm in your business, I show this to your clients, and I say, hey, give this to your employees today, 2 ads that are exactly the same ad, except for one ad has fake testimonial, same exact testimonials, same words are all the same, except for in one ad it's got Jane Q, John P, just that, first name and the last initial. And just ask the people which one of these appears to be more persuasive. At first they'll say it looks the same. You'll just point to the one, and then say, does it look really a lot more persuasive or just a little bit more? And just see which one, and it'll be very interesting. And you'll find that the less information that bumps up against a person's critical factor in their mind, it's going to be accepted more. So the more real something looks, the more tangible it is, the less we have to doubt it. Because we hate doubting stuff. So stuff like that, to where you can engage critical thinking and just ask people, find out why did they like that one better, and then just point it out. Say, oh, well, the testimonials over there, by the way, all had just a first name and a last initial. That's a terrible testimonial, and it tells you nothing, But that's what we want to teach our people to ask. We don't want people to believe somebody all the time just because they said it was true.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Because now it sounds like, too, the same thing with pretexting applies also to written text. So really training people to maybe not to be like overly paranoid, but to at least question the things that they believe to be truth, and then being able to look into that a little more, to think before reacting. That would probably save a lot of people from a lot of trouble in this industry, at least.
Yep, it's not always easy to teach, but that's what you guys are there for. And by the way, it's been great being with you guys today. Thank you for having me on the call.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I just want to ask you one more question, if I could.
Sure, absolutely.
This is a quick one. A lot of our listeners love to read books, so we're going to definitely link to Amazon or your page where your books are sold. But are there any books in particular, maybe that you have written or that others have written, that you think really are top-notch on this topic of unconscious persuasion and body language, being able to read those 2 things? Any books that you can mention to us that we should definitely take a look at?
I normally would not mention more than one because it reduces the probability that the sale is going to happen, but there's actually 3 that are pretty good. They're pretty good. The books that I've written that are directly related to everything we've talked to are Psychology of Persuasion. That's book 1.
Okay.
2 is Covert Persuasion. That's an easy one to remember. Covert
Yes.
Persuasion. And then the last one is The Science of Influence.
And these are ones that you wrote?
Yep.
Excellent.
They're all at Amazon.
Yeah. It might, I understand what you're saying about the 1 versus 3, but I can tell you this: I had at least a handful of listeners that went out after and bought all of Dr. Langen's books because of some of the things that we talked about. And we've had quite a few nice reviews on her book on becoming an artist. So you never know what happens with that, because we have a lot of people that love to follow up the podcast with going out and actually reading some of the material that will go more in depth, because there's only so much we can cover in 45 to 60 minutes.
Well, hopefully we triggered a lot of cool ideas for people.
I think we did. I think this was excellent. I really, really appreciate your time working with us on the schedules and everything, and then spending the time here with us to discuss these things. Guys, unless there's any other questions, I think we'll let Kevin get back to his day.
No, I really appreciate your time and on this. I learned a lot.
That was
Good
great.
to be here, you guys. And it's nice to know about your company and business. I was not aware that you were there, and it's really nice to know that you are, because I know where to go now.
Yeah, well, I'll send you some links for some things that we talked about, so you can look them over. Anytime, feel free. I mean, if you need help or information, I really mean this. If you start reading into pretexting or something, and you need a little more information on things, we always have research and articles written. We'd be more than happy to share that with you and pass that on with you.
I will take you up on that and follow up, too. That's awesome.
Now, if people want to know more about you, we already mentioned the website, www.kevinhogan, that's KEVINHOGAN.com. Are there other ways that they can learn more about you? Is there a Twitter feed or other things that people can do?
They can look me up on Facebook. That's fine. And yeah, my Twitter is Kevin Hogan.
Okay.
But you know what? The best thing is there's an e-zine that's available at kevinhogan.com, and you know what? Everybody has an e-zine, everybody has an email, and some of them are okay. Test it out for 3 weeks. You know, this week we talked about thought control of a presidency. You know, and we're not normal. We don't try to sell you something necessarily every single go around. We're actually a little unusual. Instead of with a 2-minute and 51-second video, we'll actually put up 68 minutes like we did this week, and it costs nothing. And you might be surprised as to what you find. It's pretty cool.
That's
Coffee with Kevin
right?
Hogan. Yep.
Coffee with Kevin Hogan. Yeah, I subscribe to that. It is, by the way, guys. Anyone listening, it is an excellent email. So I would sign up for that and get it. I find a lot of good tips in there. I've been getting that for months and months now. So it's excellent. I appreciate all the work you put into that, actually.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Again, thank you so much. Look forward, maybe again down the road in the future, we'll get you back on and talk a little more about some of your other topics.
All the best to you guys and to your listeners, and this was a good time. I thank you very much.
No problem. You have a great day.
Take care, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Wow. That went really good, huh?
Yeah, he was a good interview. Good interview.
Very good.
So, yeah, I think, his site really is excellent. I've been going there and, of course, to YouTube to watch some of his videos that he posted. I think a lot of the information that he has released is very beneficial for our industry. You know, I think it is surprising. Like Mike Mutz was saying when we first started on the call, how a lot of these people, they put this information out there and then they don't really. It's like new to them to hear that this can be used in a malicious sense, and I understand that. You know, I mean, a lot of the things that he does it because it's good for people. You know, this is a lot of the things he mentioned are beneficial for the sales and marketing fields and how people can use them, even in I think personal social engagements. It's nice to learn how to become friendly with people right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were a lot of concepts that were brought up there. I don't think a lot of them are necessarily easy to do right off the bat. I think that definitely practice and awareness of them is going to be essential, you know, for anyone that tries to integrate that into their activities. So. Oh
yeah, I definitely think that that practice is what's going to make that perfect. I mean, some of those things, you know, I mean, literally in a social engineering audit, you have a few seconds when you walk up to determine a lot of those things. What's the best way to stand? Do you lean in? Do you not lean in? What direction do you face somebody? What kind of smile? What kind of questions? How much smiling? These things, it can be a little overwhelming, I think, at first. And if you mix in some of the other sciences, because this was just one, if you mix in things like, like micro expressions or other things like that, it can really, I think, get overwhelming for a lot of people. But I think, like he said, you do it enough, and now when he approaches someone, there is no thought. So, yeah, Jim, I think that's a good point. We probably, people will need to practice to make that perfect, because a lot of those points he brought out are just going to be really intense to kind of pick up on the first try. So we'll probably have to have a couple more discussions like that on these topics and read a couple of those books before we can master these talents.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it's going to come down to, for people that are trying the various techniques, take them one at a time. Don't try to do too much at once.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that he brought up that was really valuable was how he uses it in a very soft way with his family. Persuading his family, like with the way he asks questions to his children, or things like that, in order to get them out of autopilot. Maybe practicing in a very non-malicious way at home or with your friends or family could be a way to build this into your automatic responses to people and how you communicate. Yeah. At least I'm going to try that. See how it works. I'll be persuading and manipulating my family from now on. So let's see. I guess you can check him out at www.kevinhogan.com. And really, what a great podcast, guys! I appreciate your being here again. Look forward to next month as we have a really, really awesome guest lined up. But that's all I'm going to say. I think Dave, Jim, Mutz, we're really excited about next month also.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll have more on that later. Just a little teaser there. Feel free to check us out at www.social-engineer.org, or if you're on IRC on the Freenode Network, you can check us out at Channel Social Engineer. At Twitter, we're Human Hacker. If you really like the outro music, feel free to check it out at ccmixer.org. The name of the artist is Michael Anthony. He's got a lot of great songs up there. So until next month, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, walk on, walk on, walk on. When I'm thinking about the times you say, talking about every single day. 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. Walk on. Trying to remain on track, yeah. Stay on track. Watch your back. 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 Walk on. Walk on, walk on, walk on. You walk up the line, time after time, thinking things will stay the same. Now the game isn't played that way. You've got to stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, stay on track. Walk on, watch your back. Walk on, looking around you and thinking it's okay. Forgetting about the things that you did yesterday. But if you only knew that the game isn't played that way. Stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on, watch your back, walk on. stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on. Stay on track, walk on. Watch your back, walk on.